Hello folks, bit of an impromptu, just quick bonus stream today because I've got some work to do on the game and I figure I might as well do it live. And that means that those of you who want to nose in on what I'm doing can. And it also means I can give myself a little time limit because I'm only going to work on this for an hour. So what I want to do today is just start mocking up some of the menus and pop-ups that we need in the game. So we've been collecting a bunch of feedback from the alpha demo. Thank you so much to everyone who has jumped in and given some feedback on the game so far. We've got a Discord set up for that, so people can do that. We've got Discord here. And you'll notice I've got a different streaming surround for when we're working on my own games, because it's slightly separate from Indie Game Clinic. But yeah, if you've played the game yet, give us some feedback on the Discord is best, because then you can get updates and you can see what we're working on and what we're prioritizing and everything like that in the sort of background. The last stream I did on this, I went through all of the feedback that we've gotten so far, and I've actioned some of it already. So out of the last bunch of feedback we got, I fixed some very small things, like one player didn't know you could look up and down in the game. So, you know, like in a platformer where you hold down and the character looks down, they didn't know you could do that. So I fixed that very quickly. I fixed the bug where you can build two rooms at once, which is very strange. Tweaked a few little things that I had planned on doing myself anyway. A player noted that you get these wooden spikes that appear in a room, and when you build a new room, it doesn't sort of get rid of them. Doesn't when you build over them, which is sort of out of line with what the rest of the game leads you to expect from when you build a room. So I've fixed that. Lots of little things, and then there's some bigger things. So the visibility in the game is going to be a constant struggle, I think. And I think one of the things we need to do is just decide what the ideal device for this is for, because when people play it on smaller screens, they really struggle with the visibility. So what I did was, at the moment, we've got a zoom that gradually zooms out the more of the level you build, because this is a platformer where you build the level as you go. And for the time being, I've lessened how far that zoom goes out, but it does mean that if you've got a big screen, you don't get the full effect of finally seeing the game the way it was originally designed, which was with quite a small character and quite a big space shown on screen. So I feel like there maybe is a happy middle ground between what works well on a big TV and what works well on a Steam Deck for this game. But it seems more likely that in the long run, it would be better to have a different set of variables for each of those situations, because not having the full effect of being able to zoom out really far is sort of feels like a bit of a missed opportunity. I need to make that sound effect quieter, it's so loud. Feels like a bit of a missed opportunity to not eventually zoom out really far. But yeah, I fixed a load of little bugs from the last round of feedback, and there are a bunch of little information-based things as well. That is what I'm going to be looking into today. So Gleb, the programmer I've been working with, has already sort of got some plans about how to handle the pause menus. So what we do here in this pause menu and what we do here in this relic book will all become part of the same pause menu. And I'm not going to be looking at that today, but what I want to look into is stuff like this little thing here that you can see on the screen here, this little pop-up. And then there are various points in the game where we do need a pop-up to appear over the game to explain something. And they're not necessarily tutorials per se, but things like the first time, I'll see if I can trigger it here. The first time you pick up a relic, and it's the first time you've got that relic, we want to kind of force the player to look at it and see what it does, right? And I'll probably make a couple of little mood boards of this. So let's say so in the relic book, I've had the cursed purse before in this run, in this save, so I know what it is. So in this situation, when I pick this up, it would just go into my inventory, and hopefully the player remembers what that does. But if this is the first time I see this relic and I pick it up, what we want to do is bring up a pop-up on the screen and tell you, hey, new relic discovered. This is what it does. And we don't have like a graphic design approach for that yet. Nate Dot, the playtest is open, so I've just made a alpha on itch that anyone can drop in and play, really. One thing I would say is the feedback is more helpful if this is your kind of game, which is kind of like a puzzle platformer type thing. Oh, that was another one that I picked up a green book. I clicked that away so quickly. I've got used to clicking them away so quickly, partly because they look so ugly. But when you pick up a green book or a red book, it shuffles more rooms into your room deck. And that brings up a scroll that tells you what's happened. And I want to make that look a bit nicer as well. So the little graphic design tasks I've got here, these are more like sketches. These aren't necessarily going to be the assets that go in the game, but I need to start designing them. So I've got this graphic design document in Canva where I sort of do everything to do with the graphic design of the game. I work out the fonts, think about capsule art, and I've got these like interface concepts for thinking about menus and stuff in the game. And what I'm going to do today on here is based on the stuff, I'll just call it pop-ups needed. Based on the stuff I just talked about, we're going to need a new relic pop-up. So the first time you get a new relic, it will tell you what it is and what it does. Room shuffle pop-up. So this is for when you get a book, you pick up a book or a map, a red book, a green book, or a map, and it says, hey, you've got a gold room in your deck now. You've got a new green room in your deck. That needs a pop-up. And we also need a bad one. And this was something that was revealed through playtesting. I kind of knew it a little bit anyway, but I don't know how to trigger it actually. There's a ghost, there's a monster, there's a wraith type thing. Is it on here? Can I spawn it? Yeah, there's a couple of these wraith monsters. This is the mini one and there's a big one. And when they touch you, they take a piece of health off, as you'd expect, because they're enemies. But if you watch this number down here, this 26, that number goes up. It should do. That went up to 27. The reason that's happening is these are like kind of a deck manipulation mechanic, right? So if you imagine in Slay the Spire, you get certain creatures like the slimes that add a goop to your deck for that match. And too many ghosts. And these do a similar thing, but what they do is they add a void, which is just like an empty room to your deck. Now, there's no way that that is properly messaged throughout the game. The only way you would know would be if you saw that number go up at that exact time and then worked it out, which is like, yeah, that's not good enough. So what I want to do is create a new pop-up for when you pick up a green book or a red book, and those are generally like, you've got a green book, a red book, and a map. A map shuffles in a golden room, which you can only get by finding a map. It's a special thing. The green books and red books shuffle in copies of green rooms and red rooms you already have, and they let you sort of mess with the deck a little bit on that run, so you can have all green rooms, which are like peaceful rooms with nice stuff in, or all red rooms, which are like high risk reward rooms. And I want to make the pop-up for that, and then make like a version of that that's like the wraith version, right? So when we get touched by one of those wraiths, we pause the game, we bring up the pop-up, we let the player know this has gone into your deck, this has gone into your room deck now. And one of the reasons why I like doing this stuff in Canva is we're kind of committed now to doing a lot of doing most of the overlay of this game in more of a like high definition style, which might be a bit confusing to sort of pixel art purists, but because the game isn't at a consistent zoom level anyway, it's never like we're kind of moving the camera around and doing stuff like that. So it's not really a pure pixel art game. And the other thing is that the graphic design style I'm starting to go for here, I'm not saying I've got it perfect because I clearly haven't, but the style I'm starting to go for here is meant to evoke sort of like 1980s board game rule books, like old D&D rule books and stuff. That's kind of why we've gone with this typeface and stuff like that. So I think if I can get all of these pop-ups to sort of match up with that graphic design style a little bit, then we're going to have like a consistent style across the whole game for all of the interface type stuff. And yeah, the ones I just talked about are the ones that players are sort of having trouble understanding what's going on there. So yeah, I like the idea of I'm gonna let me put that down here. So I like that idea, Nate. It's a very simple inclusion that is a good sort of UX thing. So yeah, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put some music on in the background, and then I'm going to just start working on these, and I won't get them finished this time, but just type in ambient floating and see what comes up on the. Hopefully, we don't end up too Enya, which does happen sometimes when I try and put on ambient music in the library. Yeah, I'm just going to kind of work through these a little bit and see where we end up. It won't be the... I think what I'll tend to do is... The reason I like using Canva for this is Canva is just like PowerPoint on steroids, and it has a massive clip art library of stuff. So if I want a scroll or something, it's in there. I'm not being sponsored by Canva. Hey, if there's a Canva rep watching this and you want to sponsor me, sponsor me. It would be great. I need money. You need game developers to think that Canva is cool. And I do think it is a genuinely cool tool. So reach out, give me lots of money, and I will sing your praises. I will sing your praises even more if you stop sneaking AI-generated assets into the library when I'm not looking as well. So the new relic pop-up. I think in terms of the general layout, what I would like to do here, I'm gonna... I want like a... There's probably be a thing where I need to redraw my character, because I'm sort of imagining like a little picture of Lem, the main character, sort of holding the thing above his head, and then the graphic of the new relic is hovering there above him and floating up and down. So I might... Look at that guy. Look at that. That's amazing. Stickman holding up trophy. Let's see where we go with that. That sort of thing, right? So imagine that that's Lem. Again, we're just thinking about broad strokes layout stuff here. We're not actually going for the final art style. But what I can do, put the art, put a preview of the game in the background so that we can see it in context. A preview of the game in the background, and then imagine that is, maybe that's darkened a little bit, maybe it's even blurred. I don't know if we can, I think we can achieve that in the engine, but it doesn't matter. I mean, we can say ideally we'd like to blur it. So like that sort of thing happens, right? And then we've got Lem, we've got a relic. I think I can just grab a relic from the actual game. They're all over here. Right. And we do have this bit of a problem of like, how do we incorporate these assets, which are more pixel art, into a non-pixel art format? But the thing that is good about this project generally is because it's all designed to look a bit sort of like a messy jank cartoon, we can get away with a little bit more because the general sort of creative direction of the game doesn't take itself super seriously. So I was thinking of that sort of thing. And then like a big text that says, new relic discovered, and then da-da-da-da. Something like that. And then just to give some using the actual text from the game, I'll just go into the data for this and pull out the stuff. So we've got a representative piece of text that is actually the right size. And I will worry about typography in a minute. This is not the typeface we actually want. Present boxes no longer contain bombs or monsters. That's what that relic does. And I think we want to be using Garamond, which I believe is the same font that they use in Rogue Legacy. It's got a nice kind of fantasy feel to it without being really fancy and illegible. What's going on here? Oh, I'm clicking in the wrong bit. And I suppose what we're going for a little bit here is if you look at so when you pick up all of the little tool items in Blueprints, it does a pop-up like this. But Blueprints has got this very sort of... It's like a sort of... The creative direction of Blueprints is sort of like a twee mystery, murder mystery thing, like an Agatha Christie novel or something. So this sort of bohemian mix of fonts really suits that kind of mid-century European vibe that game has. We're going for like... We're going for this, I guess. The kind of like retro, late 70s, early 80s, D&D, retro RPGs, Stranger Things kind of thing. You know, this is very close. What was that one? Which is why I've used a lot of beige in the game so far. Trying to avoid using like harsh white in the interface and do it beige instead, so it makes you think of these kind of where this would be on like dirty old paper. But yeah, they have a lot of these sort of quite chunky curly fonts that look like something you'd see on an old fantasy book. That's kind of the vibe we're going for when we do these pop-ups, I think. So it might be that this is on some sort of scroll. Not sure yet. And then we can mess around with that stuff in a minute. I just want to get the general layout because you need to know what the information is before you decide where everything goes, because one piece of information might end up being a lot bigger than another. And then you think, okay, actually, this needs to... this needs to sort of have its own space or whatever. We've also got a key color with relics. They have this sort of purple magic stuff behind them. It has its own... They have their own sort of particle effects and stuff. So they have this sort of pinky purple association with them. I do that a lot if I'm making a fantasy or sci-fi game. I think a lot about using the visual effects, anything that's like explosions, lasers, magic, to sort of indicate what category something is in. It's part of the visual communication of the game. It's why it's worth getting in really early on. You know, if you have a game where all of the good guy stuff is blue and all the dangerous stuff is red, it just is so much quicker at communicating stuff. So I do that a little bit here. All of the stuff associated with relics is pink and purple. And that just makes them pop out very quickly in the level. And if you see a weird object, because these are all weird objects, right? So when you get a new relic, you're going to see these objects and not know what it is. But because it's got that shroud of purple sparks coming out of it, you know that it's a relic. So you're able to mentally place it in that category that it belongs in, even if you don't know what that specific one is. So we've got this kind of pinky purple fire things. I might even, let's see what we get if I put purple fire in. And what I can do is I can make rough designs on here, and then I can sort of take the parts of this that I need into something like Procreate. And if you've used Procreate, it's a like an iPad drawing tool that lets you do very sort of messy, painterly stuff. And I really like it. It's not very good for doing clean graphic design, but if we have some graphic design done here and we want to then take it and mess it up a little bit and make it look a little bit more organic, then Procreate would be quite good. Although doing it in GIMP would work for something like this as well. So even that is at least starting to give us that color coding of relics are purple, you know. Then we can start looking for medieval stuff that would fit that kind of D&D type theme of the graphic design. And again, it doesn't need to be perfect at this stage. I'm just throwing out ideas. And what I'll probably end up doing, like if you look at these 3 pages, this is what I do when I pick a typeface. I pick loads and loads of things I like, and I try not to make any decisions until I've got a big menu of stuff to pick from. With a design like this, what I'll probably do is end up with 2 or 3 pages of this duplicated, which I can then go through and pick the one that I like most from, you know. So already I've got maybe a bit of a divergence in ideas here, because in one of them we've got Lem standing there celebrating that he's got the item. Maybe in the next one we actually just have the item here and we don't have Lem there, and we just put the item on a banner or something like that. So it's sort of, it just showcases the item instead. And I can change that banner to be like a dark purple to fit what we were just saying about the theming of the colors. But I said in that recent video about visual communication, like color coding is something that's worth thinking about all the way through. And you don't have to stick with it. You can change it as you go. Like I've changed the colors of my keys a few times. I've changed the color of this gem up in the top right a few times as I think through the game and think about what these things symbolize and how they relate to each other. That's pretty good. That's kind of giving a sort of, I don't know, it kind of looks like something you would get pop up in Binding of Isaac or something like that. That looks cleaner than this, and the reason is that the design just has less elements in it. And because we're making such a big deal out of this object, it almost doesn't matter that it's like an enlarged pixel art on a thing that doesn't match. I mean, some people, there'll always be some people that don't like it, but we can't please everyone. I'm just going to make a little kind of scratch sheet here where I put in any bits that I find that might be useful. These are quite nice as well. These fit the sort of D&D, but a little bit basic and childish kind of vibe is what I'm going for here. We've got that kind of Adventure Time feel of it being sort of fantasy, but sort of a bit silly and derpy. Could go with something like that. Then we're kind of restricting ourselves a little bit with text overflow, whereas doing this kind of approach where the text is just on there and there's something less clearly defined behind it means that it doesn't matter so much if these go over long or whatever. What we really need to do is work out our buttons. Because like Nate said in the chat, maybe you want one button for okay and one button for don't tell me this again. They're hitting us with the Enya vibes. I need to skip it. what I probably need to do here is just block out the shapes. If I go tools, there we go. What I'm trying to do at this stage, because in the next few weeks at some point, I'll have a call with Gleb and I'll go through a load of menu stuff from a sort of technical point of view and hear sort of what he's planned with the menu and stuff like that and kind of share notes. But what I'm trying to do with this is just think about layout and style and not worry about what the engine can actually do. Just think about, like, in an ideal world, what would we want to end up with? So I've got something in my head before we start approaching actually implementing it, you know? And I guess if you were doing this in a trad studio setting, this is what you would call wireframing. But it's a little bit too close to final art to be wireframing, which is the hazard of having all of this clip art, is you can just throw stuff in. But I quite like that. So that's pretty decent. I mean, maybe we'd have like a... These play like a weird sort of 8-bit sound when you pick them up currently. But maybe we'd want like a bit more of a doot-doot when this happens. One of the things I haven't resolved yet in the game is I don't want all the relics to be initially unlocked. I want the simpler ones to be unlocked, and then you do something in order to shuffle in 3 more ones. Kind of like, you know, when you go up with XP and Slay the Spire, it gradually adds more stuff to the relic pool and the card pool and stuff. I think I'd like to take that approach eventually, because it gives you another thing to unlock, and it also means any of the ones that have a sort of slightly more advanced mechanic to think about can be hidden away until later on in the game when we know the player will understand certain things, you know. Although one of the cool things about the relics in this is that players sort of learn some of the mechanics from the relic descriptions. So I got a note on this in the Discord the other day, in the Dirt World Discord. Someone was saying that they didn't know that you could grow flowers in the game, but then they got a relic that told them, oh, flowers grow faster now, and then that made them go off and investigate how that worked, that's kind of perfect to me. That's kind of the sort of thing I want. Just wonder if there's any place for using that gold color in the text. And then there should be the beige. I don't know. Starting to get a little bit fussy there with... That's like the basic ass mobile game version of what we want to do. Maybe there's one that's more centered. See, this centered one gives a lot of space for the text to stretch out, and I know some of these object names are quite stupidly long. I'll just see which one's the longest in the game. We've got like the boots of tax evasion and stuff like that. Yeah, the cone of celebration, the boots of tax evasion, the scarab of approval, Pyromancer's Periapt. They are quite long names. Lem's Removal Service. So I think on this screen, if we did do something in the middle, that gives a lot of space to stretch that name out either direction if we need to. And I think this is actually quite, again, this is quite close to how Rogue Legacy does it. Got a little purple shimmer in there. Do Rogue Legacy item pop up. Let's see if they've got it in the UI database. So if you don't know about the UI database, it is a fantastic resource. Rogue Legacy 2, actually, we want. Really, really good resource. I mean, if nothing else, because of how high quality these screenshots are. Right? I really like the UI style for Rogue Legacy 2, because what they've done is they've combined two things that don't usually combine very well. And I suppose a lot of 4X games do this as well, but basically there are two different extreme UI styles, right? You've got skeuomorphism, which is where you make the UI look like a physical thing, like it's made of stone and the buttons push in and, you know, it's like a physical thing that could exist in that fantasy world or that science fiction world or whatever. And then you've got flat design, which is just like, these are flat panels and the UI is meant to disappear. And you see that in more modern iterations of older fantasy series, like Skyrim has a really flat UI compared to Oblivion, and Zelda has gradually got more flat as it goes on and less skeuomorphic. This style that they've done for Rogue Legacy is exactly in the middle. It's got this kind of like, you know, it looks a bit comic booky. They've drawn the lines around everything, and this is kind of one of the reasons why I'm talking about taking what I do here and moving it into Procreate later on, because I can take this design and I can sort of trace over these trumpets and stuff, and I can make them into the art style that I've used elsewhere in the game, right? So it's just sort of like using that as a reference and then converting it into a style that's a little bit more like this and looks a little bit more like something that's been illustrated. So yeah, I really like this approach they've done with these paper things. I don't know if that's 9-sliced. I don't know how you would 9-slice it because it's got all of this irregularity around it, but maybe there's a point in the middle where it can be stretched out. But I think this for me is very close to the style I would like to do for these. So when I'm picking out the assets in Canva, I'm more looking at the general shape than like, does it have an outline or does it look like a photo? Because I'm going to change all that later on anyway. I'm just using them as placeholders, and then I'll probably go in and try and fill stuff like in later on. I really like this style. Obviously with this, you've got a really high degree of how much this fits with the art style of the game, because they've got these characters that are actually done in 3D, but then they're rendered with toon shaders and stuff to make them look flat. So it does all look like the same art style, which is, you know, it's a little bit far removed from what we're doing here with the mixed pixel art and flat art, but there's only so much I can do in regards sort of making all that work together. And I think we can make it work together. It just needs to be sort of charming in its own way. One thing I don't think I can do currently in GameMaker is like outline text, but I think we might have a plugin that can do that. So again, following that spirit of what I said earlier of doing like the ideal version here, and then later on worrying about whether or not it can all be achieved, because that's That's probably a better approach when you're just doing the initial sketches for something, right? We're going to write some checks we can't cache, and then later on we decide what to do about that. So if I put a bit of a glow around that. Because that's the bit there that once you've read that the first time, you don't really read that again. So it just becomes a bit of sort of celebratory decoration to help emphasize that something good happened. So after you've seen it the first time, you're not really going to reread it and look at what the text actually says. You're just going to go, oh yeah, it's the ta-da, it's the trumpet screen. Colors said, I'm an Unreal dev. I've just picked up GameMaker for a faster way to iterate on game design. Is that a good use case? I mean, yeah, it is very fast. I think Unreal is... I don't get on very well with Unreal. I think it's very much set up to be like a realistic 3D art engine that you can make games in. But everything is so hidden in terms of like making things work functionally. I just don't get on with it. The problem I had with the Unreal the last time I tried to use it for a game jam was just like I wanted to do a very simple low poly art style, and the engine still expects you to set up these complex materials for everything, and it's like I just want flat shaded materials and pick what color they are. I don't want all of this stuff. It made me go through so many loops to just do really basic things, and I hated it. So I'm biased towards GameMaker, but that's because it's the engine I know how to use, so I can use it quicker than anything else as well. So there's always that element of just you do get some sort of what would you call like a tech debt in learning any new thing, really, and it comes down to the sort of thing you want to make. So because I predominantly work in this, and not in this is Canva, but because I predominantly work in GameMaker, and it's a 2D engine first and foremost, I just don't explore the ideas I have for 3D games, right? But then again, if I ever wanted to make a 3D game, I would probably be looking at Unity or Godot instead, just because I find Unreal so unintuitive, and I want to like Unreal. I used it for work. I worked at a studio where we used it to make some Fortnite maps, and that was a good experience because that is just like UEFN, which is like the Fortnite level editor, but you use Unreal. It's just a big toy box of everything that has ever been in Fortnite, and you can just tip the toy box out and go, I'll put one of these over here. And using it when you've already got a set of art assets and scripted objects is fantastic because it works exactly how I would expect a 3D level editor to work. But making anything from scratch in it is so long-winded. Look at this guy. I should have a screen with Lem playing a trumpet like this. And then if I put those buttons down there, I probably need to shift the whole thing up a bit. I'm not going to think too hard about like if these buttons should have the keybinds or anything on them, because I haven't worked out a style for that anyway. So that can be something we worry about later, and it's sort of a bit more of an engineering thing as well. So we'll worry about that later on. But I think, generally speaking, that to me feels like it fits the game quite well. And then we can like throw up some fireworks and stuff in the background. So I'll just throw them in because, again, this isn't a Figma file. We're not actually building this exact thing. We're just using this as a style guide, right? And if we're going down the sort of, you know, we're doing a bit of a Vampire Survivors here. We're going to pop, lots of little magical fireworks going off. And it's going to make it abundantly clear that discovering a new relic is a good thing that you're supposed to be excited about. Yeah, Paul, I can't remember if this was one of the things you mentioned, but there are a couple of features like this that are mainly information based, and there just wasn't anything in the game for them yet. And it sort of, sometimes there's just stuff you already knew about, you knew that you needed to make that thing better or whatever, and it just didn't get round to it in time or whatever. It's like, what if this is like, what if there was a game show? What if there was a game show in a fantasy world? I do think game shows are quite a good reference point for how video games do celebrations. I think they used quite a lot, and we've only really started to cotton onto that in indie games since Balatro and stuff, but in mobile games it's very much the norm and has been for a long time. I'm glad that people did the reports at all. I mean, some folks have been really fixating on bugs, which is fine. It's not as immediately helpful because some of the bugs we already know about, and I'm really much more interested in like what did people find interesting or exciting. But I also appreciate sometimes people just couldn't have fun with the game yet because of the bugs, and so that's, you know, understandable. But it's also not really, the game isn't at a stage where I care too much about going through and squashing every bug, right? Because knowing which bugs are more important comes down to knowing which parts of the game are more important, and I don't feel like I have that information yet. You know, I was just trying to find out, like, what do people find fun about the game at this stage? What do people want more of? That kind of thing. I think that's very close to what I want. Yeah, I mean, the main reason I think about that is because you do hit a point where you know what all these are, and then you maybe don't want them to interrupt the play. But I think you're raising a valid point, right? Because what you're talking about is positive friction. And in, like, Vampire Survivors, when you pick up a new pickup and it does that chest thing and it goes, it's sort of forcing you to take a break from the main action of the game. And that could be really annoying in some situations, but it quite helps in a game that is designed to be very sort of overwhelming and overwhelming your senses all the time. So, I don't know, there might be a case for not even having this, and I definitely will keep that in mind. So just so I don't forget that, I'm going to just... Are you saying we should artificially extend people's playtime by not letting them skip something repetitive? You know. Thinking with my publisher head on, that's totally fine. And it could even be that you see this every time you pick up a relic, but there's like a new, you know, one of these when it's new. Like that. Yeah, we're doing artsy stuff, Rog. We're doing wireframes at the moment. So this isn't actually what's going to end up in the game directly. You'll be pleased to know. This is more just thinking through what we're going to need to do eventually. that kind of thing. New. That's one of those words. You know, sometimes you look at a word for too long and it just stops being a word. Like, how is that a word? I think it just looks less like a word because it's... I know that this is one of those deeply subjective things that no one else is on board with. But when I look at new and it's got a small E and W in, I'm like, that's a word. Yeah, that's a word. And then I see it all in all caps and I'm like, how is that a word? That looks like a random set of letters you make up to not have to forfeit a round of Scrabble. What does it even mean? I feel like that's a pretty good direction for what we're trying to do here. And I think what I would do with these, again, this isn't the actual asset that's going to go in the game, but what I would do with these is try and eliminate the white in these fireworks so that they are sort of there and spangly, but they're not drawing the attention. So, because we want the bright white stuff to be here in the center, because that's where the contrast is going to draw the eye. We don't want to like confuse the player by having this stuff around the edge that looks like it's more important than it is. So if we do put these sort of celebratory fireworks around here, they should be colorful, but they shouldn't be like so dazzlingly bright that they stop you from seeing what you're supposed to be looking at, which is reading some text about what the thing does, right? So we'll put these around here. I'm newing. Is that like mewling? Mewing. Is it mewing or mewling? I don't know. Who thought we'd be making, kids would be making orthodontic exercises trendy in 2025? Paul, what is the recruitment system in your game? Take us through it. I'm happy to hear about a recruitment system. I like games where you get to recruit people. It's a lot more fun than being a real world hiring manager. We have to like throw people's CVs in the bin and stuff like that. I'm sure Roger knows all about that. Roger, how many CVs have you thrown in the bin this week? Okay, while Paul is telling us that and Roger's telling us how many CVs he's thrown in the bin, I'm going to move on to these ones, which is we've got a good pop-up when you pick up a book or a map and it tells you you just got a new room, and we've got a bad pop-up where a ghost bites your bum and you get a scary room added to the deck. And we want these to have roughly the same layout because they're like the good and evil version of the same thing. So I'm going to be... I'll start with this as well, so we've got the same text styles, but I think this is going to have a different shape generally because it is fundamentally a different sort of thing. We also, I think this is where we can reinforce the idea of there is a deck of cards behind the rooms, because people didn't totally get that. Not everyone who played the demo actually understood what was going on there. So this is a place where we can reinforce the metaphor a little bit of a deck of cards. Again, because I'm going to draw over this later with, we'll possibly draw over this with Procreate. Doesn't matter what this deck of card looks like. I just want the general shape, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the too much information version, and then I'll strip away what we don't need afterwards. "400 applicants. So Paul said, I wanted a system where I find random NPCs in the world and the game RNGs their stats for different skills. Oh, okay. Carpenter, blacksmith, farmer, etc. That's a pretty neat system because you can already have like areas that feel defined by which professions are in the different places. Huh. Where do they go when they're not? Where do they go when they're deleted? Are they just in a cupboard somewhere? Morning, Endo. Yeah, it's hard to give feedback to 400 people. You don't need to apologize when the card thing is very background in this game, but if people don't understand how it works, then they will struggle with the strategic layer of the game. So I just need to make it clearer. Konnichiwa, I don't know who you're asking about the Godot thing. I don't use Godot, so I see lots of talk about Godot in our Discord because that's what lots of our members use, but I don't know, and generally not interested in anything AI related. I can't tell who you're asking that question to, though. Roger, one of the things we used to do for feedback at university is we would create a big spreadsheet and then we'd have like tick boxes that added a certain sentence to the feedback. So you could sort of procedurally generate the feedback. You could just click a button and it would say, yeah, this thing wasn't very good. You didn't show this thing. But I've never used what do they call it? Those application manager system type things. I've never used one of those where it was actually good enough to be able to do that stuff quickly. What are they called? I've got a name for these. They're called a drafting book in the game. You pick up the book and it gives you a card in your deck. You found a green grimoire. You found a crimson codex. That's what the red one is called. That's a good name. A random red room has been shuffled into your room deck. That's the sort of thing we want, but not as rubbish. That, but good. So I wonder if there's a because this is very centralized because it's just talking about this one thing. I don't know if we necessarily want exactly the same thing here. And having a different layout kind of lets people know that a different thing is happening as well. So let's try something slightly different here. Maybe we even have a much bigger title. We do have this door icon. And I think maybe one of the things I could try and develop to make this all a bit clearer what's going on is we have like a symbol for the room deck that's like a deck of cards like this. And then this is drawn on top of it. So we have like this purple and orange door here. And it kind of, so we have a symbol for the deck of cards, or the deck of rooms. I'm gonna quickly see if I can. I don't really use the drawing tools in this because they're not very good. But we get that sort of lilac-y colour that is all of the stone in this game is lilac rather than actually being sort of pure grey. It's a good trick. I got it from The Simpsons. If you want your game to look funky, just never have pure neutral colours in it. Make them all shades of purple and stuff. Just to get something representative in here. Again, so I can see there's 46 viewers in the chat right now watching a grown man play with clip art. I'd like to think that it's statistically likely that at least half of those viewers are Canva reps. If you're a rep at Canva, you want to give me some money to promote Canva to the game dev community, I'm here. I'm here for you. I'm the guy for the job. I'm the guy that can make Canva cool with the game devs. All it takes is just one phone call, one email. You don't even have to talk to me on the phone. In fact, I'd prefer it if you didn't. And before you know it, there's going to be a new movement in indie games. There'll be a whole new style of game where every art asset is a Canva asset. And we'll call them Canva wave games. It's going to be like the new PSX. PSX is starting to get a bit passé now, as much as I love it. So we're going to make sort of PowerPoint clip art cool. We can do it. We can do it together. Sorry, if anyone just joined in the last 3 minutes, you've basically just entered Bizarro Bob Ross land. I'm just drawing and saying weird stuff. So Roger might be able to answer a question I had on LinkedIn. Well, it wasn't a question. It was something I saw some people discussing on LinkedIn, and I was being nosy. And people were basically discussing use cases for AI. And one of them was assessing portfolios. And they were saying, you know, wouldn't it be good to get an AI to do the original assessment? And I said, you know, having been a hiring manager and done that kind of work, what I need in that situation isn't an AI to do my job for me. I need a UX or a sort of UI solution that makes it quicker to sift through stuff. So imagine that you've got 400 portfolio PDFs for an art role. You slam them all into a system, and then that system just creates a massive mood board of like every image that's in every PDF. And then you can just go through and click on the things that catch your eye, and they will deep link into the PDFs and pull that PDF up. That to me is a much more useful tool for that use case. But when all you've got is an AI, all you've got is a sort of machine learning hammer, then everything looks like a machine learning nail. It's like just ask people what tools they actually want, instead of assuming that people want the solution that you can come up with. But yeah, that's what people do. They love coming up with solutions no one's asked for, instead of just asking people what would make their job easier. The problem is, if I make this background look too much like an actual thing, you can see it's becoming increasingly more realistic. You can see, like, you're looking at that, you're thinking, wow, look at that door. I could step right through it. It's so real. But the more I make it look like a real thing, the less this looks like a deck of cards. So I have to be careful with how much detail we put on here in the final version, because we still want it to look like a flat image on top of a deck of cards. And at the moment, it looks a bit too defined. Maybe we don't want that. So I think the way I would achieve that, if I was going, well, I'll rough it in now so you can get a sense of what I would do. But when I come to draw over this in Procreate, all of the line work on this top image will be a lighter color, and that will give the sense that it's an image on the top of the deck rather than like an actual outline around an object, which is what these black lines are, right? And we can have a representation of a door. And then that's at least sort of showing us this is the deck of cards that represents all of the rooms that you can draw in the game, right? And we've got an object to represent that now. And then in the main game, if I deblur one of these, you see this bottom bit of the screen down here. Reset the brightness as well. This at the moment just has a picture of a door. So eventually what we'll do is we'll stick that in the interface, and then people can start to make that association of that's that deck of cards that I saw in that other screen. When I got that Crimson Codex, I saw that deck of cards. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect at this stage. We're just thinking about what's all the information that needs to be here. The Crimson Codex should probably be crimson, though, I think. And then, because we're doing this as a bigger illustrated piece, I can make this look a bit more thematically interesting. So we've got the little pixel art version you pick up in the game. And then on this screen, I can make this look all scary and look like a Necronomicon type thing. That kind of thing. I don't know. Something like that. And then we have the green grimoire, which is our nature rooms. And maybe we do some color coding on this text as well. That kind of thing. Can't remember what the wraiths look like in the game. Let's give this a sort of ghostly color. See if I can just grab the wraith face from the game. And then if I have to draw over it, I'll at least know that it's the right proportions and stuff. That's my wraith. Look at him. So this guy, he's just drawn as a face, and then the rest of him is just a cloud of particles behind. How are we doing for time, guys? I said I would do an hour. We've just gone over an hour. Well, I feel like that's some good progress. I think we did the main things we intended to do. And it'll probably take me a bit longer to actually implement these, but at least then we'll have some stuff explained in the game that people were struggling with. And to be honest, I sort of expected them to, because it was stuff that I just hadn't bothered to explain yet. I guess I was sort of wanting to see which things people could work out on their own, and then go from there. Like what people's threshold was for weird stuff. But some of this is just much more interesting and exciting to just be told. I was talking in the last stream with some folks about sort of layered secrets and having like stuff that is told to you in the menus about, like I was talking about the relics actually, and having some things where it tells you a relic does thing A, and it does do thing A, and that's the main thing you would get it for, but then it also has some secondary hidden thing that it does. And I really like that kind of approach, because it's a very wiki games approach. You know, you think of games like Don't Starve that have a very strong sort of, oh, you need to look things up in a wiki element. The more of that stuff you don't tell people directly in the interface of the game, the more you're creating that kind of game, I guess. Like a knowledge game for the sanity of people that hate the term Metroidvania. I think I just need to draw him from scratch. Smoke monster. Just trying to look for anything that looks like the creature I already have in the game, but I might just have to draw it. Wonder if it would be better if it was an open book on these. It feels almost like it should be a book and then this is jumping out of the book or something. But I don't really want to overcomplicate it. That sort of thing. Ended up with everything very central again, but maybe that's better. Yeah, it does look like a plus eye, you're right. Happy now? See you later, Paul. This would be a nice sort of scene to have a little bit of detail around here of like what is magical about this book. You know, we've got a sort of green naturey book, and then we've got a red scary book. But I can do that once I draw over it. And that already feels kind of different from the layout of the relic discovery screen. So I think that's pretty good. I'm just trying to make sure that this has a different value from the text so the text doesn't disappear. So we sort of do a slightly bluey green here, a slightly browny red there so that the main text pops out. Look at that. That's amazing. Look at that amazing hand. Brrr. Where's a nice ghostly hand when you need it? I think here I would just put this guy, draw around him a bit so he's doing a nice sort of cloudy wiggle across that gap. And then we've covered those few things that, or a few of the things that people were kind of struggling with, sort of understanding what was going on. And I do think maybe that, so there's an argument for and against having the don't show me again on the relic screen, because sometimes just breaking up the action gameplay a little bit with pop-ups that do a little celebration and stuff helps you to slow down and think. I'm sure there are more of these that I haven't got yet, and I haven't factored into what we just did. Oh, there's a Blue Room version of these as well, which is called... I called it a blue tablet, but it should probably be called a techno tablet or something, because the Blue Rooms are like the advanced alien technology stuff that you find, spoiler alert, later in the game. And we want something like that, but finding the right angle is going to be difficult. But hey, it's just a rectangle. I can draw that from scratch if I really need to. If it doesn't exist in the Canva clip art library, and it's not going in the game. Aliens in my Goblin game. Hell yeah. Look, if Baldur's Gate 3 can start on a big Cthulhu spaceship, then all bets are off. Just make it a Nintendo Switch. You found a Nintendo Switch. Time to buy Stardew Valley again. And nothing else. I'm probably just going to have better luck with drawing this one from scratch, because I really lucked out with the scale of this image, and I'm not going to find something that fits exactly perfectly without just drawing it myself. I wonder if we're keeping the deck down in this corner of the screen, maybe on this screen we should open that, like enlarge that and then have an arrow coming out, but that might be a bit, again, a little bit fussy. When I say fussy, I mean sort of overcomplicating things, you know? So I'm going to delete these ones at the top because I can't see myself using them. Cool. We made some progress. Right, I'm going to pop off again. So my favorite thing about Baldur's Gate 3 is that there's a little... When you hover the icon over a doorway, there's a little door icon to let you know it's a door and you can interact with it. And the first time you see that icon is on the mindflayer ship where the door is a sphincter, right? So the first door you interact with in the game isn't a door, it's a big meat sphincter. And it has a door icon, but the text says sphincter when it gives you the tooltip. It's great. No notes. That's how to start a video game. Having one of the first interactions you can do be click on sphincter. Larian. They know what they're doing. Right, see you all soon, folks. I'm going to stream at 10 my time tomorrow and do our tower defense review bonanza marathon. So the door is the door, click this thing, this door to open the door thing is the interaction, but it shows when you hover over a sphincter and then the text says sphincter. See you guys later.